my best friends who I also call Mom. And today we're going to be talking about the dimensions of wellness and how we balance those dimensions and how they interrelate to each other. Let's start with occupational wellness. Occupational wellness is how we balance our time between our work and our lives and our family, and it has a lot to do with time. It also has to do with purpose and how we get a sense of fulfillment and purpose through our occupations. So that's a broad definition. So we all have childhood dreams, and I seem like I recall in third grade, Mrs. Mason, I think I have the right grade, that I wrote a letter of what I was going to be, and I named all of the sports I was good at. I'm sure I listed a whole lot of them, and I was going to be the new Howard Cosell, but I called myself Casey Cosell. And I actually did start college thinking maybe radio, TV, and I'm sure it has to do with your background that you'll share with us. But when I got into that freshman year, I took my communications classes and I took my kinesiology classes. The communications classes didn't spark anything in me like the kinesiology classes do. And I remember it was Dr. David Shows, and I said, I want to know how to get your job, and he told me how to get his job, and the rest was history there. So first, let's start with childhood dreams. Did you have one?
I certainly did, and it was in radio, television, and from a little girl on, that's what I wanted to do, was be a broadcaster. I didn't want to go to college and meet somebody and start a family. I wanted to go to college and graduate and get a degree and go right into broadcasting. And I wanted to be like you want to be Casey Cosell, I wanted to be the Barbara Walters of that day.
Mm-hmm.
Now you would say Megyn Kelly. Everybody could relate to that today. But that's what I was going to do. I got kind of sidetracked, but that was my childhood dream.
Where do you think that dream came from? Did you watch somebody? Did you have a mentor? Did you?
I was lucky enough when I was very young to get some opportunities to have some shows. There was a television show in the Valley, and we went to Weslaco and they filmed it. It was called something with Youth Talks to Nancy or something. I was very young, and I just thought that was a blast. And nobody watched it, and no one knew about it. But that was my first show, and I had others later that were a little bit better. But from that time on, I loved it.
And did you do something in college?
That was a fun show. I did something called Camera on the Co-Ed, and we taped it at KTBC. And this was obviously quite some time ago, and before women were doing as much broadcasting as they are now. So I really thought that was fun to be on the cusp edge of that. And I did a lot of fashion and interviews. And I had to go down to KTBC at a ridiculous hour in the morning. It was taped, and my roommate said, "Why do you do this?" And I said, "Because I love it." And I got a rush from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for about a year and a half. And then later I had a couple of other things, but that was what was done in college.
And so your major was radio, TV,
Mm-hmm.
and that led into a career in TV broadcasting. Who did you work for? Who was your first job?
Well, besides all of those volunteer things, I guess my very first job was KNOW Radio, and I was there many years. And I did some stints at other stations, KVET and KOKE and KHFI. These that changed many times, so
Mm-hmm.
These letters change. I worked for all of those and did freelance. But for years, I did that up until the family came. That stopped it.
It sounds like that was fulfilling. What was the most fulfilling part of that career, and maybe some accomplishments during that particular career?
It's a very exciting business. When I was at KNOW Radio, and like I said, this was long before women were very big in broadcasting, I did feeds all around the nation for the John F. Kennedy assassination and for the Tower Sniper. And you get a rush when you're broadcasting from Austin, Texas to all over the nation telling what just happened. You may be brokenhearted and you may stop and cry in between, but anybody in the business will tell you that that's kind of a rush to be telling everybody, what has just happened.
Sure.
And John Kennedy was on his way to Austin from Dallas. Austin would be the next stop, so it was a big deal in Austin. So that's why everybody came to Austin for the feeds. They couldn't get into Dallas because Dallas was too busy.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a rush from that. It's very exciting.
And where were you with the Tower Sniper? Were you on campus?
That was on campus. I was with KHFI TV, and I came back from lunch to go in the door, and the cameras were running out. I didn't even know anything about it, and so I was blocks away. I had been on the drag where the sniper was shooting. I'd been on the drag, and then we worked on something like that. You work around the clock. I don't think I went home for 10 hours because people, like I said, have to have a feed from on the spot. That was on the spot. That was right here in Austin, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Tragic.
Mm-hmm. And you were the one in front of the camera talking about it right there on the spot.
Sometimes
just steps close by?
No, I wasn't close by. You feed right from the TV station.
Okay.
That was television, and I was on camera. The one on JFK was radio.
Mm-hmm.
That was a radio station.
Now, I think you did this for a while with children. So you continued this career with 2 children?
Well, I guess, yes. I guess I did continue freelancing with 2 children, and that was pretty hard because both that particular career and mothering, demand a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Your father would remind me how much money I was losing when I would drive into Austin and pay a sitter and gasoline and get paid $10 for one commercial. So the broadcasting career wasn't going too well. Then KGTN in Georgetown offered for me to have a radio show, the Round Rock News with Nancy Rabb at 7. I taped it. They were wired to my house. I taped it at 7. And they played it back at 7:20 a.m. I taped it at 5, and they played it back at 5:20, and I thought that was big time. That was 5 days a week, 2 shows a day. Pretty hard to get news. It was mostly school and city, and then when we found out the 3rd child was coming,
which was
you, your father said, I cannot keep 3 children quiet. It's 7 o'clock in the morning for 10 minutes while you tape your show. So it's just not going to work. So I told him the rest of his life that he ended my career.
Or me, one of the 2.
Or you.
I'm thinking that maybe that might have been hard to give up because it's something that you love to do. So do you remember that time frame and how hard of a sacrifice that might have been?
Well, there was another something playing out in our life at the same time, and that was we were trying to have a family, and that wasn't working well. We were not able to do that. So we prayed and prayed and prayed for a family, and to start the family, then we had to adopt, and then had you and your other brother. So when I had to give up the career and the family started coming, it was all blessing.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready. It might have been really different if it hadn't been that those 2 things were playing out at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was ready for the family, had prayed for it. Here they came, 3 and 5 years. There would have been no time for any kind of career.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that hard because you had prayed for that family, and the family's now here.
And I also had realized by that time that broadcasting is very demanding.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be good at it, it's not like some things that it demands your time. One time they called me in the middle of the night and said, go out and cover a fire at the Texas Baptist Children's Home. And I said, I have 2 little boys sound asleep, and they said, the fire is at the Texas Baptist Children's Home. I woke up the babies, put them in the back of the car, and went out and covered a fire. That's when I began to see that I didn't know how long I could do those 2 things.
That you can't say no to that when they call at midnight. You go.
You go.
And so I think that would be hard to balance with motherhood. What words of advice would you give to women interested in going into this area, and then to follow up with who also want a family?
Well, if you're going into the broadcasting career, first of all, things are very different. My experiences that I'm relating have changed. This was when women had not been doing much broadcasting. So things are different now. But I would just say I still think it's a demanding career, and I still think motherhood's demanding, and I would think they need to be aware.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult.
And if they do try to do both, maybe a lot of support.
A lot of support.